Hello and welcome. My name is Vinod Hopson, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Making Art with My Parents, a conversation with Eileen Maxson, my friend Eileen Maxson. And mostly we'll be talking to each other, but there's a place for us to interact with you all at the end of the conversation. So it's going to be moving at a pretty big clip. We are monitoring the chat, so please feel free to enter in your questions or comments into the chat as we move through, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can at the end. A quick introduction. Eileen Maxson is an interdisciplinary artist working at the confluence of video, performance, installation, intervention, and photography. Across mediums, she uses humor and pathos to twist empty promises and failures of the American dream and broader consumer culture into wry works in search of meaning and identity. Maxson received her BFA in 2002 from the University of Houston. That's where we met. And her MFA from Carnegie Mellon University in 2008. And then attended the Des Ateliers residency in Amsterdam between 2008 and 10. So we're going to start the conversation, Eileen, I think establishing our bona fides, as it were, and talking about our friendship and our relationship. So I don't know. I can start with a story of meeting you from the first time, or do you want to start this?
Oh, you go ahead. I'm a little scared.
I'm not going to say that I'm not so brave to say that I made an impression on you to begin with, but I will say that you definitely made an impression on me. And the first time I remember seeing you was sitting at the UH computer lab on the second floor. I think it was Halloween, so around this time in 2001. So 21 years ago, it must have been.
And just the same, I'm sure.
You came in fully dressed up as Enid from Ghost World because you were going to a Halloween party. And so I remember seeing that, and I had not seen Ghost World yet, so I did not recognize the costume. But I was like, who the hell is this woman? We were not in class together, so yeah. But I definitely remember seeing that and then putting it together, I think, when we were introduced properly later.
Well, it's funny, actually. I think the wig that I wore for that costume, I used in a video, Amy Goodrow, tape 5925 Amy Goodrow, which Vinod, you were the voice of the MTV guy. So the video is, you're watching... I'm playing a character that's like applying, it's in like a failed audition tape to the real world. And Vinod lent his voice to be kind of like a jerk, fast forwarding through my story.
Like an intern or something, some MTV intern, yeah.
Which I remember we shot actually when we were both working for FotoFest in, I think it was 2002.
Yeah.
So it was leading up to the 2004 biennial on water, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it was late 2002, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it certainly wasn't during the biennial because it was the preparation for 04. I think when we were both interns there at the time. So.
Yeah, and so you were really influential with that work, not only with your voice and your acting, but also in like what I ended up kind of processing the image, making it look more gritty and like fast forwarded VHS. Like I remember taking the work to you and showing it to you, and you were like, I think it looks too clean. Like it looks too, digitally fast forwarded. So you had a really big influence on that work, which is I think like my best known work. So yeah.
It was early on. I mean, I feel like that video set some precedents for a lot of your work there. Like so much of your work is about like a lot of those like vestiges of pre-digital sort of thing, like that, like noise and interruption, which came up later in your work.
It was also my first performance, like the first time I'd ever performed as a character in front of a camera, period, I think. So Yeah.
And this is apropos to this conversation. I know we talked a little bit about this before. That's the first work, not that set the tone, but there are some references to your family within that work, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, just that, not sort of directly involvement with your family, but there are some sort of tangential elements of that character, Amy Goodrow, that you sort of borrowed from your sibling.
Yes, my sister Tara gets very upset because she thinks that character is her, even though it's not, because I think I use the detail of like doing Stamp It Up cards, which it was this thing that my sister and my mom were both really into, like making crafts, like these homemade cards. And so I use that detail in the character. And then I think the character also says something about loving animals, and my sister is a vet tech. So.
I think, Tara should not be self-conscious about it, because I think that knowing Tara and the character of Amy Goodrow, they're not actually, like, Amy's a little too quiet.
I'm not sure if Tara is logged into this, so we can say whatever we want. No, I'm just kidding.
So, I mean, that certainly, it wasn't like your first video, because, right, our degree, when we both graduated from U of H with these degrees in ostensibly photo, but really photo digital media, a third of which was video content. I didn't make a lot of video while I was at U of H, but I mean, was that really what you were drawn to when you were there? Was video sort of what you were?
I started making video really towards the end, I think. Jenny Stark was teaching the concentration class that we did in video, and I came to it really late, I think, in the process of like being in the program. Like it wasn't something I did, as a freshman or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I just really loved it and took to it. And so I think actually that one of the first clip that we're going to show is a video that I made while I was still in school, when we were both at University of Houston. And it's the first work that I made with directly with my family. So this would have been in 2001, I think. And it's an interview. The process of making it, I did an interview with my father and paired it with a Super 8 footage that I had found of my parents when they had just gotten married. And so they were kind of around the same age as I was when I made the work. I think when they were married, they were about 23 and I was 21, something like that. And I remember the reason why I made the piece was kind of to understand a little bit more about why my dad in particular, I guess because it was his job, why we moved so much as kids. So my dad worked for an oil company, and we ended up moving quite a bit when I was a kid. And so I think that was always kind of like a sore spot for me. Especially I moved, I think in 8th grade, and then also before my junior year of high school. So those are kind of rough times for for teens.
Yeah. Why don't we watch the video, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the video, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good.
When I first started work for Shell, one of the things they said was that you have to be willing to move, because they may not need you one time, this particular time in New York. They may need you in Virginia or in Utica, New York. And if they had a job for you and the job was someplace else, that you agreed that if you didn't move, then you should really find another job someplace else. And so that becomes that commitment that you made 30 years ago becomes a little bit different. But on the other hand, I fulfilled that commitment. I enjoyed the job that I did, my customers, and got promoted as we went through the years. And so for you to give up something like that, which is a tremendous amount of security that you give up by going out and finding a job that maybe you wouldn't like, you. Maybe you wouldn't find a job that would be like the one that I had and have today. And you say to yourself, do you want to give up your whole life and your lifestyle to stay in one place? And that's a tremendous amount to give up that kind of security. Because let's face it, the longer you have with a company, and assuming you're doing a good job, the more security you have with that company for your for the future. Because at that time, when you have 25 or 26 years invested in your company, if you're going to get a pension so that you can retire, let's say at 60 years old, you've got to have that amount of time built up. And so then, instead of feeling the way I do, which is I'm really very fortunate, I'm very happy to be working for the company I am, and I'm looking forward to working in the next 7 years. It could have been the last 4 years could have been just a terrible experience. More than likely in 1998 I would have been out of a job. Some things in big companies, if you don't take the opportunity, they think the world of you until you take this opportunity, but when you turn down that opportunity, all of a sudden, you become less valuable to the company, and then they can bring somebody else in who's willing to accept that responsibility.
So Eileen, you were talking about about moving around and about, was there an element of sort of confrontation? Were you trying to sort of confront your dad? I mean, you talked about the difficulties, right? Like the moving was happening in sort of a formative age for you, right? Like middle school and high school is when you were sort of bouncing around. So was this video? You said trying to understand some of the move there. Do you think there's some confrontation in it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was really about, I think, like understanding the kind of sacrifices or decisions that you make as an adult that I really, I don't think I had. Now I look back on it and I can understand it more. The idea of like reordering your life around a job and around security. But I think as a 20-year-old or whatever I was, I think it was a little confrontational, like, why would you do that? But I think on the other side of it, I came out of it understanding a little bit more. And I think now when I watch that piece, I also have a different relationship to it. Like as a person that's, an adult, supposedly, I can understand, what he's talking about maybe a little bit more. It's interesting too, I watched it with my dad maybe about a week ago, and he kind of places it, he left his job at Shell a couple of years after that. And so in the work he talks about, well, in 1998 I would have been out of a job, and then I'm looking forward to working the next X years. And so then his relationship to what he said is also different. Like he's then reflecting back on, leaving the company and how things didn't work out, I think, how he thought they would in that time either.
There is something that I think, when I think about this piece and your work as a whole, like I see a lot of your work sort of tied to place and time. Like obviously it's video, to call it temporal is kind of obvious, but more specifically, I mean about like a specific time and place. And, you being in Houston and coming here for work is like something that is, of course, like pretty common here. That's what brings everybody to Houston. That's what brought my family to Houston. It was my father as well. I followed my father, who came here for work, which is sort of peripheral or adjacent to the oil and gas industry. He was in the shipping industry. In that way, like there's a lot of sort of overlap between us, right? I mean, like where you came immediately before you came to Houston was from New Jersey, of course, where I grew up. And actually, we did not know each other in New Jersey, but we both lived on opposite sides of sort of Morris County. Like right? I mean, I'm older than you. Like I was in high school when you were in middle school, and so we were definitely not going to know each other. But there's a whole lot of shared experience there, and some of the movement to Houston, so which I think is common between us, but others. The other thing that I see is a lot of your work is references the 1990s. So when you talk about moving here, you moved to Houston in the 90s, right?
The second time, yeah.
So you actually lived here twice?
Yes. So we moved here, the first time I think was in 86, and then the second time was in 96. So we moved away in between that, yeah.
So, like so much of the work, like obviously this one, but then you did, a series of work about Reality Bites, which is specifically about Houston in the 90s. And, other works you've done sort of reference music from the 90s. I mean, I find that interesting because it very much is about, I think it harkens back to your youth and trying to reclaim something, but it also happened to be a time when you were living with your parents. And then, so.
Well, I don't know. Part of me wonders if some of that has to do with kind of this idea of, I really liked Quantum Leap when I was a kid, which.
I'm coming back tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a reboot happening. But I really like this idea of someone just going back and fixing something that went wrong on the timeline or whatever. And so I think some of that, like some of like how I use time and, kind of going back to the 90s, I think has to do with that idea of like, my whole adult life, I guess like my adult life kind of started in 2001 and, things have not been, I saw some article recently that just called like this century, like it's like a dumpster fire or whatever, that we could list off all the things that have happened the last 20 years. So I wonder if it's something like that, like kind of wanting to go back to this like point where, if one thing would have gone another way, maybe we would find ourselves in different circumstances, like personally as well as like a bigger picture.
I mean, I think that is an interesting, the 90s were, people look back on it with a lot of nostalgia. I think we're going through 90s nostalgia right now. Economy was good. As Americans, we sort of knew our place in the world. I think we were feeling very good about ourselves, right? And all of that ends in 2001. And that's kind of the break where we talk about this dumpster fire of this 21st century that we're dealing with now.
Right, yeah.
So, to go back to dumpster fire. So the newest body of work, which we're going to talk about next, sort of comes out of a time period where, again, you were sort of, because of the pandemic and other things, like you're making work with your parents after a period of living with your parents again. Is there something about that you want to talk about? Do you want to set up this next body of work that we're going to be talking about?
The lie detector?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, my parents and I are very different politically. I would find myself on the, let's say, extreme left of the spectrum, and I won't place them where they would be, but they're on the right, let's say. They're more conservative. And so I think, after the 2016 election, I think like a lot of families, there was, I guess some tension there. I think not that I think it was maybe just from me, just being upset about the outcome of the election. And so I think, but we made it through. Like it wasn't like, I think a lot of families had a more difficult time, like breaking relationships and friends or, we all know people, I think, that have become estranged from their family or friends or colleagues or whatever, just can't deal with people that disagree with them, especially since the 2016 election. And so kind of going back to that, earliest video that I made, I guess I did want to kind of confront that, but also like in a productive and interesting and maybe funny way. And so I came up with this idea to have us all do a lie detector together. And so that is what I did.
Do you want to just get straight into the clips and then we can talk about it a bit after that?
Sure. I think the first one we're going to show is like a very brief, like one of the funniest parts, I think, that I've found in the editing. So I just pulled it out because it's one of my favorite parts. It's kind of a back and forth with me and my mom, and it showcases, I think, her humor.
Great.
Are you a feminist?
Define feminist.
Well, what does it mean to you?
No, what does it mean to you?
What does it mean to you?
What does it mean to you?
Well, I'm asking you.
I'm asking you.
I think, and we can get into this a little bit more. I'm really intrigued about the difference between your mother, the questions and the interactions that you have between you and your mother, and the ones you have with your dad. So, yeah, I think I don't want to say too much about it right now, but I think that you notice a pretty dramatic difference between the way you interact with the two of them.
That's probably true. I think one of my dad's questions to me in the video was, do you think that we butt heads so much because we're so much alike in personality or something like that? And I think that's probably true. So yeah, I think that you see more of when my dad's, got the mic or I've got the mic, then and with each other it becomes a little bit more confrontational. But we do have one more, my mom.
Okay.
So we have like a little bit longer clip of my mom. And the kind of setup to this one is we were talking about, so my mother's parents, my grandparents, were both Irish immigrants. And so we were talking about her background, and then it kind of leads into the next part. Next question. Did you tell your mom that you wanted to become a nun?
Yes.
Did she laugh in your face?
Yes.
Why?
Because she said, I'll go in the front of the convent and I'll talk so much that they'll show me the back door.
Your mom knew you?
She did. She did.
Is it better to be rich or good?
Good.
True. Okay. Mm-hmm. Would you take a vow of poverty to save the planet?
No.
You wouldn't?
Mm-hmm. Well, poverty has its extreme. Is that the truth? Inconclusive.
That was quick. Very good.
All right. I take a vow of poverty until I felt its effect on me, and then I probably change.
Well, what does that mean?
I would do a little bit. I mean, I would do my fair share.
So if your neighborhood all said we're taking a vow of poverty, you would chip in?
Tell me a little more. That's what I would say. How much do you want me to give up? Are we talking like Independence Day, where creatures from another planet come down?
What? No, we're talking about like right now. So, I mean, one of the big creators of climate change is consumerism. Mm-hmm. So if you had to give up one thing for the planet, what would you give up?
I would give up liver and onions.
You don't eat liver and onions.
I'd still give it up.
I think your mom, she steals the show. She steals the show in almost every video I've seen of hers. She's a scene stealer.
She is,
I know that you. We just talked about your dad asking you about how similar the two of you are. I mean, I think I see plenty of similarities that you have with your mother as well. Do you think that you are less so than her?
I thought you were going to ask me the same question that she asked. She asked me in the video. She asked me, do you think you're funnier than me? And then she started laughing. and I said, and I was hooked up to the lie detector, and I said no. which I think is true. So I think I try to live up to my mom, but I'm not quite there.
I'm right there with you. I think that's another overlap that we have, that our mothers shame us because they're infinitely funnier than either of us.
Your mom is very funny. That is true.
So the conversations between you and your dad, I think, differ from your mom quite a bit. And one thing I noticed both, and we'll see the video with you responding to your dad's questions at the end. But it's clear to me that both the questions that you ask your father and the questions that your father asks you are almost like they're super confrontational, and it's like a game of gotcha that you're playing. And I actually think, and I know that we're not seeing all of it. I've had the privilege of seeing some of the unedited video and seeing the questions between your mom and you that aren't yet edited and ready for sort of public consumption. But your mom's questions, I think, overall tend to be a little deeper, and I find them much more interesting, honestly. Like, they're existential questions.
My mom's like giving herself a pat on the back.
That's fine. I think she should. I mean, I was just sort of intrigued by the questions because she asked some much deeper questions about how you perceive yourself, about how you perceive your artwork and the work that you do and your education and your relationship to both your parents. Whereas the conversation or the questions that your father's asking, are about politics, about your politics or the way you're perceiving the world or how you perceive him in particular. And your questions for him followed that sort of format as well, I think. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
I guess maybe more political, because that he's more, I think, on the surface political than my mom. Like, I think something about this conversation that I had with them through this project, I talked with both of them, I think, with things that I don't think otherwise in this lifetime we would have talked about. I don't see how they would have come up any other way. But I think that my dad is much more open about talking about politics, and his major was political science. So I think it's more something that he enjoys, and that's, that we kind of, butt heads about sometimes. I
mean, I definitely want to say that within the video and the questions that were asked, I referred to it as a game of sort of gotcha that you guys were playing with each other. But I didn't take it sort of as a debate per se. It did seem to be about trying to understand, but it was about trying to I want to confront you about this topic, and I want your response, as opposed to your mom's question seemed to be about a deeper understanding overall.
Well, I did tell my dad the other day that editing his part versus my mom's part is difficult because I find him to be a spin doctor. So, which I think we'll see in this next clip, that I don't think he ever says yes or no to...
No, he's very good at sort of talking around them.
I think he's had some media training. That's what I told him. Okay. Do you admire toxic men?
Toxic men? Well, one half of this is certainly one of the most toxic people I've ever seen. The other half is I tolerate him.
But at one time, I believe you've admired both of these men.
I can't say that I admired Clinton. I admired his policies, economics policies, but after he got involved, in his sexual escapades, I couldn't bring myself to admire a guy like that.
But you can still admire the other one?
The other guy, because this one lied so much that going back so many years, This guy was in the public. I mean, everything about his life is known to everybody. Well, we know all of his wars. We know all of the people that he married. I know when he's gets up there and is lying. The other guy, I can't tell when he's lying. To tell you the truth.
Oh, so Trump lies too. They both lie. But you know when Trump is lying?
I think so. Yeah, I think
but
so.
Clinton hides it, so that's what you don't like.
Well, yeah, because he can do it as good as anyone. He's the best liar there is on earth. Bill Clinton. I mean, he ought to get awards for that.
So Trump is not, so you can tell when he's lying.
Trump. I mean, what do we? There's nothing that I don't know about his past. I mean, he grew up in New York. He loves the limelight. He loves to get out there and spout and goes on and on about nonsense that, I'd say, I don't believe this. I don't have to, I guess.
So you still admire him?
I admire his success with the policies that he instituted during his 4 years. The things that he's accomplished are unbelievably great.
I don't think there's a lot to say about it. I think your dad is really clear.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
Maybe we should just go on to the next clip, which is your clip.
Yes.
Okay, another picture for you to look at.
It's interesting how my pictures look different than your pictures of the same person.
It does. It is amazing when you think. Well, honestly, that's a good comment. Do you believe that President Trump has improved the lives of the people who voted for him?
Well, that's not really his job, is it? His job is to improve the lives of all people in the United States.
Very true.
That's a great...
I think he would think that. I mean, I got to give him that. I don't agree with a lot of what he does, but I think he...
Did he improve the lives of all people in the United States?
No, that he would think of all people, not just a few. Not in that particular situation, but in some other situation.
I mean, in this picture, he looks like he's the kind of person that would think about people that weren't his supporters, but I wouldn't go so far.
Okay.
But, I guess I couldn't answer that. I have a very hard time thinking about...
Looking at it?
Well, yeah, I think that a lot of his supporters are people that have been left behind for 30 years or more. Like this perception, I think, that the government is not working for the American people. I don't know that he didn't change that perception. That he was, in my opinion, and I'm the one hooked up to the lie detector.
Yeah.
That's right.
So Eileen, you talked about going back again between the differences between your dad and your mom. You talked a bit about like how you reacted to their questions, the difference between their questions. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Like you felt that there was a difference between how you were reacting to your father's questions versus your mother's questions, right?
I don't know if it was between that. I think maybe what I was saying is that it's interesting to me watching the footage is different than the feeling of shooting it. Like some of the questions, well, I think just being hooked up to the lie detector, even though it was my own device, like I'm the one that came up with this idea. And it is, it's a kind of performance. Like, you have to believe that it's really detecting a lie, for it to work on you. But it really was like a stressful experience to like have that stuff on. And some of the questions that they asked me, I mean, I think the one that really did, I felt like in my memory, it was like I had to think about it a really long time. And it was this like emotional strife or something when my mom asked me if I was a successful artist, I think something like that. And I was like, how do can I answer that for myself, or is that for someone else to answer? And I think I also thought about it later, why can't I answer that for myself? Why is it up to somebody else, for anyone to decide? But yeah, editing it's like watching it is different than the experience of it. Like my sister Noreen, we were talking about it and laughing about the feminist one, and like there are a lot of funny moments in the piece. But she said, well, it was really like kind of 5% funny and 95% serious. So it's been an interesting process, kind of going through and working through the the evidence of what we made, of the experience that we had, which is kind of also like I know we're going to talk about next. The Word Is Not Lucky, the exhibition that I'll have at Galveston Arts Center in November, and that's really like the work that came before this, just directly before this, and it came out of this another really, much more stressful experience when my parents' house flooded during Hurricane Harvey in 2017, and so at the time, I really was focused on helping them, just like all of us, we're just like, okay, we need to just get through this. And of course, we lost stuff. So it's not.
So just before, I know we're going to talk about that project. Just before we move on from the slide detector work, what we saw today are excerpts, right? Like, and you're pretty far from finishing the work. Like you kind of just finished filming that work, the lie detector work. Can you talk about, what the piece is going to look like? Because is it a multi-channel piece?
Yeah, we just shot it the last few days of July. So yeah, it's been kind of quick trying to pull something together. And my original idea, and something I still want to do, is to have it as a 3-channel installation. So in a gallery setting, having like 3 projections or 3 monitors, so that you can see each of us as we're having the conversation. You can kind of feel like you're at the table with us. I think that's going to be really challenging because something with the edit that I've done now, you can pick and choose. Like I cut to my dad when he's making laughing at my mom, and you can create this kind of energy, I think, between the cuts. But with the idea of the 3-channel, I think it's going to be really challenging but a different experience. So yeah, that's what I have in mind.
Great. I think we should talk about the Galveston work now. That's a much longer project. You worked on that for quite a bit of time, but I think when I interrupted you were talking about the setup of it. It references experiences that your parents went through with Harvey, right?
Yeah, I think as a family, like our experience of, just the material aftermath of what happened. So, I think something I go back to in my work a lot is kind of, my parents have this kind of like archetype story of like the American dream. My dad grew up sleeping on a couch in the Bronx, and my mom's, my mom's dad worked for the telephone company, and were Irish immigrants. And, it was my mom in this lie detector piece also admitted that, her generation, it was very obvious. Like, if you go to college, you're going to have a better life than your parents. And, it's just this forward, trajectory of, bigger, better, And, and that was, so my dad went from sleeping on a couch to, having like the big house in the suburbs with lots of stuff in it. And, my brother, we would always kind of tease them because they had like a garage that was just full of stuff. And my brother called it the catacombs. So, it was like you could just kind of squeeze in between. And I contributed to that stuff as well. Like when the flood happened, all that stuff was gone. And, we found like My Little Ponies in there. There was just a lot of stuff. And so it kind of came out of, I think, that experience of having to, reckon with this stuff. And my dad, was kind of fond of joking. My family has kind of, like, as you know, a dark sense of humor. And he had a habit of saying, I thought I'd be dead for this. Like I'd be dead and you'd all be throwing this stuff.
It would be your job to sort through the stuff.
Yeah. And so it was this, it was this material reckoning with a lifetime, not just their lifetime and my lifetime of stuff, but, my grandfather's lifetime, they inherited stuff from, their family members. And so then you're just like, what is all this? And so, so I think I spent, the other thing about the work too, is that it comes out of this coincidence that the flood happened on my birthday, August 27th in 2017. And then coincidentally, 2 years before that, my grandfather died on my birthday. And so this body of work, I think, kind of connects those two events, kind of like trying to make sense of it, I guess.
When you talked about some of that work being yours, I mean, like, it was not just sort of childhood things. It wasn't just the My Little Ponies from your childhood, but it was like elements of your artwork, right? Like you talked about, it makes it into one of the works. Like, your like BFA thesis work was in there, and there was like, vestiges from from you had bookshelves that you had constructed for a video, for this distance education video that you had made, and those shelves were in there. The books from the set were in there. So it was a reckoning for you as well. And you were not in Houston at the time. You came back to help deal with that, but you guys were living in New York at the time, right?
No, we were living in Dallas.
Oh, you were living in Dallas, right?
In 2017, yeah.
Okay. So why don't we look at one of those videos? Do you want to start with Small Claims, or do you want to start with the other one you were talking about?
I think we'll start with the one with my grandfather. It's 827XX.
Great.
My grandfather was born at home, in Hell's Kitchen. I was born on August 27th. This is us, at my first birthday party, 1981. 36 years before I was born, he was training for combat. When he died, on August 27th, 71 years later, he still had shrapnel in his body. The day he died, I left work in Manhattan, and walked the street where he was born, west to the Hudson River. 2 years later, on August 27th, sewage and creek water flooded the room where he died, and most of my parents' house, in Houston. My grandfather was a force of nature. He was doting, and light-hearted, but also testy, and restless. He was first diagnosed with PTSD in 2008. 28 years after it became a diagnosis. And 62 years after he came home from Europe. He was 90 years old.
The patient continues to suffer from persistent memories of war. He recalls his sergeant telling him to kill all German soldiers, even the ones trying to surrender. He recalls various deaths of his friends. He has nightmares of men dying. He refuses to discuss his activities with his family. He will not watch war movies, or television when the news is covering the war.
This tape survived the flood. On this date, I was 25 years old, and my grandfather was 88. The war in Afghanistan was almost 5 years old. Today, it's more than 18. I thought this tape was an interview with him, about the war. I remembered him saying, "The things I saw and did were awful. Why would I want to remember them?" But when I watched it, we talk about television.
Do you remember when you got your first television, or you first saw television?
No.
You don't remember?
No. I remember radio, but television I don't remember.
I scoured my hard drives, and then my parents' hard drives, and checked old cameras, and SD cards. With no luck. But for words. The stories gush out of him, like a dam breaking. They quote him. This poor fellow, shrapnel hit him in the leg, and there was still live ammunition in there, and they had to try to get the thing out so it wouldn't explode. The poor fellow was just out of his mind. It was terrible, just terrible. My grandfather had a pretty strong accent. The paper wrote fellow, but I can hear him, he said fella. On his mother's side, my grandfather was a third-generation Irish immigrant. He used words, like guff, and valise, with regrettable ones, like darky, and fairy. On my mother's side, I am also a third-generation Irish immigrant. Once, when I was in The Hague, a Dutch stranger stopped me to say how remarkably, unremarkable my accent was, like listening to an Apple tutorial. This was around Liberation Day in the Netherlands, 2009. Later that year, my grandfather was on the news, with an Iraq combat veteran. I remember, my parents' cat jumped into his lap, while he talked. The flood took our copy. And as it turns out, the TV station's copy too. But the transcript lives online. They quote him. A lot of times I wake up, you know, and I say, oh my God. You never forget. You'll never forget. You'll die with it.
That's a incredibly heavy piece and really moving piece. I definitely want to talk about it, but just before we get into it, and the next clips we're going to show, I do want to remind the audience that we're going to be doing Q&A at the end of this, and if you have questions, please go ahead and start entering them into the chat, and we'll come back to them. Eileen, I think that of all your bodies of work, like probably my two favorites are this one and that Michigan piece. And maybe I'm a sucker for the sentiment or something like that, but I find them like deeply, deeply moving pieces, and there's a vulnerability to them too that I really appreciate. I mean, we talked about in this piece a bit like the use of the automated voice as opposed to having your narration over the top of it. I'm surprised that it comes across as like emotional as it does, even with a like non-human voice, which I think speaks to how like moving the subject is.
I think also how good those, it's like an Amazon AI voice or whatever. I think so. It's, how good those voices are getting. When I was working on it, I tried like recording the text myself, and I think it also ended up tying into, how I say in the video, like, someone stopping me in The Hague in the Netherlands and saying, your voice sounds like an Apple tutorial. Like I have no accent. I mean, you said I do, but as far as like, kind of moving around quite a bit, like I don't have an accent like my mother or father has an accent, or my grandfather, you knew that he was from New York when you talked to him. And so I think it also kind of ties back into this idea of like place, or kind of like how do you pin these things down, and how do you, I guess, like identify yourself. So I think that's kind of how the voice came about.
I think that is a really nice segue into the next piece that we're going to be watching, which is a piece that you made with your dad. And it is very much about sort of, there's elements of nostalgia in it, but I think about place and space and about identification with that and sort of how you place yourself. I mean, for sure, like late 20th century, 21st century existence is very much tied, like you are what you have. There's an element of that, and that a lot of that comes up in this work that you're showing in Galveston, and you know the setup for this piece has an element of that to it.
Yeah. So this is the title piece, I guess, of the show. The word is not lucky, and so it's a work that I did with my dad, and I had him look at pictures and then react to them. And so I ended up shooting, I think, a 4-hour interview with him where we talked about, it was basically, the work itself ends up being like a compressed life story. I think it's about 12 minutes. And, you know, a really big and important part of his life story is my grandfather. And so that becomes kind of this touchstone for his work. And you'll see that in the piece as well.
Great.
In 60 or 90 days, he cleaned Houston up. All the garbage went somewhere. Now, I don't know where it went, but it went somewhere. We moved on. I've freed myself. I didn't have anything to do with it, but that was a 2-car garage full of stuff that I should have gotten rid of years ago that contained memories. But the memories are up here. If you put all the stuff out, I could wax for hours on all these awards. We never talked about it. I feel bad if they put it at the wrong place, but that's years ago's memories. Compartmentalized and, moved on. He seldom, if ever, has spoken. I can remember him thrashing about. He's always killing the Germans. I think I'm gonna need a soda. A Coke would be great.
Why don't you tell me why you like Coke Zero?
I think it tastes just like Coke, and I'm addicted to that. When I was growing up, I loved Coke. They didn't have Diet Coke. So it's really not the most pleasant experience to recall my childhood in. Because I felt bad for him. Your grandfather used to talk, now that I think about it, the bombs and the airplane and so forth, and constantly being shelled, as you see in all the movies. I don't think, honestly, that he ever really watched very many war movies. I cannot remember him, honestly, ever being very interested in World War II at all.
I think it's important that we talk about that's not the full video. That's next. This is part of a longer piece. The part where he's talking about your grandfather is just part, like he is talking about, he's doing other, how long is the piece?
I think it's about 12 minutes.
Okay.
So I think that excerpt was like 2 minutes. I guess kind of connecting back to this idea of like consumerism, something that through the interview that I did with my dad, as well as like through the editing of the piece, which actually took me quite a long time to, like we shot it in the summer of 2018, and it took me about 2 years to, totally finish it. And something that I kind of found through our conversation, I was kind of probing him about Christmas and like Christmas being this big consumer affair, and something that connected, or that he connected through the conversation, was like this kind of exuberance for Christmas coming out of my grandfather being gone during the war. Like that was when, he was in Germany and in other parts of Europe, but at that time in Germany. And so kind of understanding that came from my grandfather as well, and kind of being away from our family. So I think we have one more excerpt to show. And this is the video that I made with my mother, which also connects with Christmas. Most of the stuff you'll see is from Christmas. And so what I did with her is I challenged her to identify like all of her tchotchkes, like her stuff that was left after the flood. I put them in a box, like a What's in the Box video on YouTube, people might have seen. And if she could identify it, she could keep it. But if she couldn't, then she had to get rid of it. And so this, I think we'll see like 3 or 4 examples of the things that I had her identify. So a little bit of a lighter note.
Good.
Are you ready?
Ready. Watch my hair.
Can you see anything?
No, I cannot see a thing. Oh my gosh. That's breakable. Aha. The little lever in the back gives it away. It is a nutcracker. I think it's when he's in red uniform maybe. It's a traditional looking one.
So is this a key?
Yes, I think I will keep. I don't care whether he has his shoes or not.
He's looking kind of ratty.
Well, makes him look old.
That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. It's wooden. Like a box. Oh. It holds napkins. But I think it's a Christmas. Mm-hmm. But I don't recall what this part is. Teddy bear. Am I right?
What does it say on the front?
Merry Christmas. Now, how could you even think I'd give that away?
Mom, I think I made it. I'm pretty sure. And it looks like there's like cockroach juice on it.
Okay, let's give it away. I mean, if it holds no sentimental value to you, after I die, you'll get it anyway, so.
Well, no, we're going to give it away.
Okay, give it away.
You ready?
You're not connected to that. You're heartless. Not connected to something you did in your childhood. This is a trash can. It feels like fake fruit within a plastic bag. I bet it's the little Christmas waste paper basket. I had a toilet seat cover that when you put the lid up, it said ho, ho, ho. I think I bought the waste paper basket at the same time. I am right. That was it. I probably don't need the fruit, but I think I'll keep the trash can. Why not? I have bathrooms I can use it in. People could see it and appreciate the fine art.
Of the trash can?
Feels like a fake book.
But what's the title?
Is this something I own?
I mean, it was at your house.
Geography. I have no clue. Oh, I see. On Art and Life by John Ruskin. And it was part of a stack of fake books.
And what would you put in it?
Nothing. As you can see, there's nothing in there.
That was a nice way to end it. I love it. As I said, your mom steals the show everything. You have great like mug shots in it. Like your face is really wonderful. The interaction between you and your mom is like wonderful. So I do want to, in the last moments of the conversation, I want to plug the show. The Word Is Not Lucky opens at Galveston Arts Center on November 20th, and it's on view through the New Year, so through February 5th. Is that right?
I think so.
And yeah, I don't know if you want to talk any more about it. Curated by
Dennis Nance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think we covered it. So these are the three. Well, we saw one work in full and then 2 excerpts, and there are also other photo-based works and some other videos in there as well. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Great. I'll put one last call out there for any questions. I don't think there were any, which
thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah.
And thank you, Vinod, for doing this. This has been really a lot of fun.
Thank you, Eileen. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. It's always fun to talk to you. We have lots of conversations. This is, I'm sure that we're going to be talking about it plenty more. So, yeah, thanks for asking me to do this. And
also, what's your website for your project? My
website is thosewhodesire.com. If you're interested in my work, and quick thank you to not just to you but to your family for having us here, for your parents for letting us take over their house for today, and a giant thank you to Arie Bouman for being the fantastic producer of this video.
The man behind the screen. Also, my sister Noreen for being the bouncer.
And loaning her phone. So.
Yeah, we got everybody's phones and iPads up here, so thanks everybody.
Well, thank you. Oh, did your dad or mom ever lie on the video?
Yes, according to the lie detector, they did lie. One question that my dad came out as a lie, I asked him, "Are you ever worried about climate change for your grandson? Like, are you worried if is the world going to end?" And he said no, because I think someone is going to come up with a great solution and solve it. And then that came back as like, that was a lie.
But the someone will come along and solve it was his justification after, right? Because didn't he say no, and then it flagged it as a lie, and then he like justified it like, oh no, what I meant was, I'm not worried because someone will come along and solve the problem.
Yeah, I think. But the true answer is that he is worried about it a little bit. But he does have faith that someone smart will solve the problem. But that was a little that came, and my mom. I'm trying to think if my mom got a lie. She got one, but it doesn't jump out in my mind as much as my dad's.
Did any of your answers get flagged as I don't want to say a lie. I mean, it's a lie detector is what we're calling it, but less than truthful, shall we say?
I'm sure they did. I have to, nothing is coming. I do think we actually really tried to tell the truth. Like, I think we were all really like, okay, this is we have to tell the truth. So I think in the case with my dad, it was he was kind of trying to convince himself, I don't think climate change is going to be a thing or something. So I do think we were all very we really need to tell the truth here. So some things did come back, but nothing nothing super glaring comes to mind.
Very good. Someone is asking about what kind of presence the exhibition will have on your Facebook page.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be posting stuff and links and things like that, and I think we'll probably have some excerpts that come out too, leading up to the exhibition. So yeah, for sure, it'll be on social media.
Great. Anything else? I think that might be it.
Well, thank you everybody for being here again. Thank you, Vinod, again. And to my familial team.
Great. Thanks, everyone.